8:02, calling the business meeting back into session after our executive session has been completed. There's no activity to report, so we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance. And Ms. Johnson, can you lead, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, for everyone in the room, please note the emergency exit locations. In the event of emergency, please leave in an orderly fashion through these exits. This is a smoke-free school district. Smoking is not permitted in the building or anywhere on school grounds. It is also a hate-free and bully-free school district. And hate and bullying is not permitted anywhere in the building or anywhere on school grounds. So we're up to board consent agenda. We have, I'm going to break this up and make it items C1 and C2. Is there a motion to approve C1 and C2? Ms. Aruda, second. Mr. Parker?
Questions?
A question on C1 and C2.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I'll direct them to Ms. Costa or to yourself.
Are they about the budget?
They're about the treasurer's report.
Oh, you can direct them.
Okay. All right, on the treasurer's report, I'll take the December 21st, December 2021 first. On page 1, wait a minute, what page am I on? Yeah. It's actually the second page of the report. It actually says, third page actually. But on the bottom it says 1 of 1.
So it's page 1 on the sheet, you're saying, with a 1?
Page 3, it's circled
Okay.
3 on the bottom.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. We have, could you just explain, I believe I understand the answer, but could you just explain the negative balance in those two lines? A 1085 and A 2710.
Sure.
One is star, one is premium on obligations.
You're asking about the far right column, unearned revenue?
Under the unearned revenue, yes.
Correct. The column to the far right, the unearned revenue, is the difference between what we've budgeted and what we've actually received to date. The revenue earned column, which is the second from the right, is what we've actually taken in to date. And on the column to the far left, called budget, is what we've budgeted or anticipated to take in. So line 1085 is our star payments. That is one that we actually estimate. We don't get actual numbers from anyone for that. We literally actually budget what we received the prior year. And as star payments change from the state level for, so, you know, whatever we don't get in star, we get in property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a difference between the two. So in that line, we have received to date $40,255 more than we budgeted. A negative represents more than we budgeted.
Mhm. So represents a surplus
Surplus.
Okay.
Well, additional revenue coming in our budget, yes.
that we didn't budget for. Okay. And is the same true for line A 2710?
That is our TAN obligations, and yes, when we go out for a TAN, we
Tax anticipated note?
yes, tax anticipation note. The firms who bid on the TAN sometimes offer us cash up front because they have extra cash on hand on their books. And they have to shed that cash because of, I worked on Wall Street and actually did this for a living before I went into public education. They can't hold more than a certain amount of cash.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually pledge it to public entities like us, and we hold it for them. And then they bid paying us less interest than they would normally have paid us. So the net cost of the premium that we receive on this side versus the interest we pay on the TAN is really the net cost of the TAN to us. But accounting-wise, if they give us cash up front, we record it here. We never know if the financial institution will give us cash or not. It's based on their fiscal position on the day they bid on our TAN. So that's not a number, it can be for anywhere from 0, or we can get a lot of cash
Okay.
some years, and it nets with our expense on our books and records.
So the two total $193,000
Mhm.
in extra revenue that is unbudgeted. What do you do with that money?
Well, for the TAN particular one, for the TAN particular, you have to look at the expense, and I would, I'm going to do that right now. There's a good chance that the expense came in higher than we budgeted for, meaning we have to pay more interest than what we would, and we look at that one particular line together with the expense, on the expense side of the books and records.
And we'll know that when?
We will, actually, we probably know that now. So on page 23
Of the same report?
of the same report, it's 22 handwritten. The handwritten number 22,
Okay.
okay? Last line on the bottom. If you actually see, we had to do a budget transfer of $41,250 to cover the fact that we have to pay more interest than we budgeted for. So that is related to the revenue line, just indirectly, the way TAN interest and premiums work.
So the first two surpluses, is that then minus the 41,000?
At the end of the year, the total surplus, the revenue, whether we took in what we budgeted, the actual revenue received versus the actual expense in our budget, the difference of those two numbers in total for the whole entire operations of the district, it is what moves our fund balance and our reserves each year. So if you add up all our revenues and we took in 140 million, and we only spent 138 million in expenditures for the whole district for the whole year, we would be adding $2 million to our reserves and fund balance that year. So in totality is how we close the books from a financial statement perspective.
Okay, and closing the books is actually a question I'll ask on the June 21 report. Okay, because that's a significant question. So are we looking at least 150,000 in surplus, based on those figures that you just identified?
When we spoke about the capital projects that we were considering a couple of meetings ago,
At the high school?
at the high school, the ones that we were talking, burn credits, windows, what we were
All
talking
right,
about.
okay,
At that
okay.
point, I had said to the board, we're looking at a surplus this year for a number of one-time savings that we didn't anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to our normal operations, I'm already anticipating in 21-22 that we will have a surplus related to some of those things we spoke about at earlier times. Pre-K before and after school, Chromebooks, busing, special education costs. There's a number of those that are one-time savings this year.
And at what time will you be presenting that to the board?
Well, I already presented one that we believe that we will have an excess, and what happens after that is the board will approve a resolution as they do every year, allowing us to fund our reserves and fund balance. We do that because we have to maintain compliance with real property tax law, which is the 4% maximum in our undesignated fund balance. We must pass that resolution every year so that we have the ability, as we close the books, the resolution is passed before year end, which is very important in the eyes of the controller, is that the decision was made to fund up to certain amounts. And that's because it takes us all the way through September to close the books and records. You need to make that decision before you close your books and records. So the normal wording on a resolution is to fund something up to a certain amount, because as we close the books, we have to record revenues and things that we may or may not receive. And those are conversations we have with our auditors all the time. For example, it's unlikely we're going to get aid from the state for special education costs. That's a big area where we have to sometimes write off costs. We do that in conjunction with them, and those are entries that are made after the year ends. So we don't know exactly where we end the year. So when I estimate now, it's what I know now, and I do know that it changes through the year. But I am confident to say we are ending this year in surplus.
Well, that's exciting news, considering the sky was falling a meeting ago.
Well, those are one-time savings related to one-time events.
And what I'm leading to, so now, I'm going to take much more time to look through this treasurer's report to see where there are surpluses and to see, if there's anything we've missed, because I said it to you before, and this is no disrespect. This board has to trust the information that we're getting from our professionals. Now, you're not the treasurer, you didn't put this report together, but you're the assistant superintendent of business, so you know the report, and you know the numbers. So we obviously have to spend a lot more time on this report, because something happened between two meetings, where we were flush with money, and now the sky is falling. So I want to bring you to page 7, and I want to ask you about another line on page 7.
The circle.
That's that circled page 7, yes. So actually, the bottom says 2 of 18, but it's circled page 7. And I want to bring you to line number A1620, .161-06. Salary, security, overtime. What was budgeted was $25,000. Then there was a $20,000 adjustment taken out, leaving $5,000 in the line. $4,383.18 was spent, leaving $616.82 in that line. What was that $20,000 adjustment for?
I wouldn't know that unless I go back and look at the details.
Okay, so we budgeted $25,000. We obviously didn't need $20,000. Was that in a previous, transfer of money that the board would have approved?
If the transfer is over $5,000 per board policy, it comes to the board.
So it's likely we approved that, but not realized what it was. Okay. I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
No.
All right. I'd like to know what that money was for.
Sure.
I'm going to take you to circled page 9. No, not that 9. Wait a minute. Circle page 10.
Yeah.
Line A 2020.190. Clerical overtime.
Yes,
We budgeted $14,000. We spent $15,094. We have a negative balance of $1,094. Can you explain that?
salary codes are a laggard in covering costs if they go over, because the payroll system is set up to pay people regardless if there's money in the code. So after each payroll cycle, really every month, we review if there's any negatives created from the payroll process. Overtime is one that we don't know what departments are working overtime and for what reasons. I mean, they're approved, all overtime is pre-approved.
It says DW, does that indicate where it was from?
District-wide, that's all clerical
That's
overtime
all?
is charged to one code in the district.
Okay. And then you'd make an adjustment later on?
We will make an adjustment not only to cover that negative, actually we were doing this work today. We will cover not only that negative, but our anticipation of where we will end that code for the end of the year, because we don't want to do, an adjustment every month. We will
Adjustment.
anticipate where we need to go by the end of the year.
Are we mindful of overtime and how it gets approved, so that if we don't blow the budget?
Of course, obviously, we're taking it from another line item and we're doing an evaluation of where that line item would run from, so that the controls are in place to never overspending your budget. That's really.
No, I understand that, I want people, if they're working, if they need overtime, if this department head feels that overtime is justified, that they are compensated, duly compensated. But no one has a free ticket to write their own overtime.
Every overtime request comes through not only the person, the department head approving it, but myself and Mr. Briggs.
Is that true, Mr. Briggs?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I think that's all I had on that, that item. I want to bring your attention to the next report. All right, you made mention of, I forget exactly how you phrased it, but you can't finish the treasurer's report because of end of the year. You can't close out the books until what, about September, you said?
October 15th, we were required to present the financial statements to the board, so it's by October 15th.
And we had that presentation
Yes.
in October of last year. All right. So in going back and looking, because, you know, we're fiduciaries, when I tell you, I'm not going to ask you where you live, but I'm assuming you don't live in the district. And many board members have made this point before to administrators. We live in the district. We shop in the same, the same stores as our parents do. And I can tell you, no parent has reached out to me like my neighbors have who don't have children in the district over what is going on with the district right now. Some parents did reach out later because they're concerned about what cuts may be coming down that they don't want to see. And so I'm looking at these treasurer's report with a fine-tooth comb. In doing so, I went back to find out that the June 2021 report was not complete. I believe you got an email from me about that. And I wondered why. And so your memo back in July of 2021 said the same thing it did with what you recently sent us, I think it was Monday, because now the June report was complete. How can you start a new calendar year with your treasurer's report? Because you submitted treasurer's report for July of 2021, October 2021, August, September, October, November, December, January. All the while June was never complete. How do you start a new year without closing out the books in June of 2021 and give us all those subsequent reports?
The board originally received all the cash reconciliation balances, and that's all that we need to roll over one fiscal year to the next is the cash balances. Those are the only things that continue the bridge from one fiscal year to the next is cash, which you received when you received it. The accrual of our expenses and our revenues is something that takes months with the auditors. That's what actually closes out our final position for just that one budget year. When we start a new year, we load in just the budget that was adopted for our revenues and our expenditures. And the only thing that we need to roll over to start the new year is our cash balances, which we do. And then a standalone is where we end with our revenue and expenditure. So while we're closing out our books for June, which take us months, we've already loaded in the next year's budget, which is the next year's revenues and expenditures, and we continue to record revenue that comes in related to the new year. If revenue is related to last year, we look at that, we make those decisions, and they're independent of each other, the revenues and expenditures from each year, and the cash is the bridge.
Why then, and now we have this shortfall that no one saw coming, why then, in 2018, you did finish the June report, or no, well actually you weren't there at the time, the district did finish and present to the Board of Education on August 22nd of 2018, the June report for that year. In 2019, they submitted the June report on July 24th of 2019, and in 2000, the report was submitted on July 22nd. Why in those 3 years was the report able to be completed much sooner than 8 months later? That, that now we're only getting the June report tonight on February 16th. And I'm going to go so far as to say, when would we have gotten it if I hadn't asked for it?
So let me answer your first question first. The 3 prior years, first of all, you got the report from us for the reconciled cash balances. And you got that.
Yeah, it was a partial report, it wasn't
You got-
complete.
And that is,
But on these other 3 years I named, it was a complete report.
because before now, you never had a CPA sitting in this chair. So the reports that you received in the prior years were not final. And if you take those reports that the board received and you tie them to our final financial statements, they don't equal. Because they were at that point in time, and we still had to close the books, record revenues, review expenditures, and the final expenses and the final revenues in those reports received in those years don't equal our financial statement.
When were you going to report that to the Board of Education?
Well, you received them, and you received the financial statements, which are then final. So the financial statements are the final information.
So you're saying they were incorrect those 3 years? We got them on time, but you're saying they were incorrect?
I would say that if I looked back, I'd say you didn't receive final ones for your revenues and expenditures.
So when, I'm going to repeat my final question. We got June's, okay, you just said September, October. It's February. Why are we only receiving this report in February?
Well, I am the one who said the board should only receive final reports. I explained that to the treasurer.
The board should what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Only receive final reports
Okay.
that tie to our financial statements. So we presented the cash reports that we can submit, and the others are not final. And they were missed from re-presenting them when they were final after the audit was finished in October. They just weren't re-presented right after that, and you brought it to our attention. But the final expenses and revenues are in the financial statements also.
So you can see why, there's reason to pause. I want to trust the work that's being done in your office. I really, I do, I always did, which is why we didn't ask these questions of the treasurer's report before. But we have to. We're fiduciaries, and we're gonna have to pick up on those stuff. And sometimes I agree, things get missed. But you're testifying that you're a CPA, and so you're doing things, tighter than people have in the past, yet the first report that you're presenting as the assistant superintendent, I want to say it's 8 months late, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt of, the 2 or 3 months that it was going to need to complete. It should have happened right after the audit. It should have happened right after the audit. That, I just want that to be known. So, I think that concludes my questions on,
Are there any other questions
Thank
about
you.
the treasurer's report?
and I appreciate the board's indulgence for those questions.
Any further questions or discussion?
We're voting just on 1 and 2?
1 and 2. And we had the motion, it was seconded, we've had the questions, and all in favor of approving this report, please raise your hand. There are 5 in favor. Are there any opposed? 1 opposed. The approval is granted. Now, the next 2 items are minutes, and even though I've refreshed everything, for some reason, they're not showing up for me. And these were minutes also that I know board members wanted to look at. So,
Yeah, Madam President, I do see them here, and
Okay.
I appreciate your comment about giving the board time. They were only put up, late yesterday afternoon.
See?
So I didn't get a chance to go through them. I would appreciate it if we could table the minutes of the second was the full board meeting,
Oh,
correct?
I see. Okay, I'm sorry, I was listening to you and
sorry.
responding to
I
Dr.
should've-
Gianni at the same time.
Okay, I should have waited.
But yes.
I'm going to ask
so,
that we table the
anyway,
February
is there-
2nd. We can approve the 9th, because the 9th was a special meeting. There's really
Okay.
nothing of substance to
So we'll-
those meetings.
Let's do February 2. Did I hear you make a motion to table?
I'd like to make a motion to table February 2nd minutes.
Okay. Is there a second? Mr. Trent? Questions or discussion? All in favor of tabling the minutes? We'll bring it back next time.
Thank you.
It's, that was unanimously approved. And then for the minutes of February 9, these are from our special meeting. Okay. Then, this one I saw. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the February 9th meeting? That's item C4. A motion by
motion
Ms.
to approve.
Felice, a second by Mr. Parker. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? This would be unanimously approved. Okay, now we are to Superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. In follow-up to the mask mandate regulation matter, the appellate division granting the state's motion to stay remains in place pending hearing and determination of the appeal on or before March 2nd. What this means is the court's given the state until March 2nd to perfect the appeal. As such, the wearing of a mask will continue to be required within our schools. In the event that changes, we will notify you in writing, and I do want to just mention that it is an item on the agenda this evening for the board to discuss, and we will discuss that item later. In terms of COVID positive cases, as of yesterday, we have 857 known positive COVID-19 cases that have been reported to the district. This is up 29 reports from our last meeting. Of the 857, it includes 245 faculty and staff and 612 students. As of yesterday also, the current count for faculty and staff in quarantine resulting from a close contact in our schools is 0. And the current count for students quarantined as a result of close contact in our schools is also 0. On-site weekly testing continues will continue during midwinter recess next week on Monday for faculty and staff members that need to test or simply would like to test. Testing will be from 2:30 and 4 at Belport High School. And earlier today, we sent a letter home to parents to request COVID-19 test kits to be sent home with their children this Friday. Simply make the request through the Google form link within the letters that went out by 5 o'clock tomorrow, Thursday, and we will send the test kits home with your child on Friday. If you have not received the letter, simply contact your school's principal for that information. We also continue to distribute home test kits on Wednesdays between the hours of 2:30 and 4:30 at Belport High School. However, during midwinter recess, we will expand that pickup window to between the hours of 8 and 2 on Wednesday. And in addition, we will also distribute test kits at central office Tuesday through Friday between the hours of 9 and 1. Central office, as those in the audience know, is located at 189 Dutton Avenue, East Patchogue. No need to register or sign up, simply stop by and you'll get your kits. And this is open to parents, faculty, staff members, and community members. So please take advantage of this, and this was also outlined in the letter that went home this afternoon. Regarding the state aid matter, I'd like to make a couple of comments. First, I'd like the community to know that we truly understand some of the reactions and concerns to the report of the unanticipated reduction of $5.9 million in state aid to the district. We too have had those reactions and concerns. There is no one reason that can be cited as to how we got here. In fact, there are several possibilities, which we've outlined in the letter that went home to the learning community this past Monday. What is important to know is that no funds were lost or missing. The district simply received all state aid reimbursement funds in a shorter period of time than expected. What is also important is what we're doing about it. We're at the very beginning phases of our budget development process. While beginning phases in prior years have presented challenges, the current situation magnifies those challenges. As we go through the process, we will consider important issues such as how this budget cycle and the ones that follow affect our school programs. How will long-range planning address the financial issues faced by our district while preserving the needed effective programs in our schools? The business office has already created a very granular report projecting revenues, expenditures, and reserves out 10 years. That report will be used in future budget presentations. How can we improve the transfer of information from one board to the next, from one administrator to the next, and from our retained financial advisors and bond counsels to each board and administration from 1 year to the next? In this area, we are exploring best practices as well as considering requesting proposals for outside advisors. We've also met with our legislators, Senator White and Assemblyman DeStefano, to seek their assistance. At the meeting, we presented how we believe we arrived at this unexpected state aid shortfall and began to explore options to partner with the state to help remedy the matter as we develop next year's proposed budget as well as future budget proposals. We encourage you to follow our budget development process, stay informed, and learn more about what we can do and will be done to remedy this matter in this budget cycle and our future budget cycles. And lastly, congratulations to Jaden Green, who represented Belport High School well at the Suffolk County Wrestling Championships this past weekend. Jaden came in second in a tough-fought bout that ended in overtime. Jaden has qualified for the New York State Championships in Albany next weekend, so congratulations and best of luck to Jaden. And also congratulations to the boys varsity basketball team, who defeated Comac last night in the first playoff round by a score of 69-53. The boys advanced to play Smithtown West in the next round on Friday, 5 o'clock at Smithtown West, and best of luck to the team as well. And that's all the announcements I have, President.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just one question on the letter. Thank you for discussing the letter. How is this going to be communicated to those who don't have children in the district? I just got an email while we were here.
Yes,
Asking
so
that
I
question.
think you were on the board when we actually created the community portal. So what we did was, and I'm going to talk off the top of my head right now, we sent the letter out to all in our learning community, which we consider faculty, staff, and parents. We shared the letter with the advance. We shared the letter with Belport.com, which I know is posted already. We placed the letter on our Facebook page. And then, of course, when we send the letter out to the learning community, everyone included our community members. And I think you were the one that asked for us to include this some years ago.
Did I?
In the portal, any community member can sign up and register to be and get all the notices. So if you're registered, you got it as well.
Okay. So if they're not registered at this time, they still can?
They can certainly register,
Okay.
absolutely.
Can we just put information out to that respect?
Sure, if you know someone, if you gave us their email, we could actually send directions, but we could certainly put that, on the
Okay.
website too. But if I put on the website, they need to know to look at the website.
Okay, all right, well, of course, I'll forward you, because this one came just to me. I think other people got it. I think we got it individually, but I will forward it.
I think a lot of folks did see it on Facebook. Maybe we can put something on Facebook about.
Not everyone's on
community portal.
Facebook. I wish I wasn't on Facebook, quite frankly.
I
But-
think also, I found it posted on our website.
Yes, I'm sorry, I missed that. It's on our website as well.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so next would be any trustee advisory committee reports, and we'll start with Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. The Student Council is applying for the National Council of Excellence Gold Award as we did last year. So that includes all the activities we organize that help serve our school and community. We have been informally surveying students about topics that concern them regarding school. We will then schedule a meeting with our administrators to talk about them. The Student Council will be handing out packaged ice cream to students as they leave the building for break on Friday to mark 75 days left of school. Last year, we did the Halls of Optimism project, where we posted different positive quotes around the school to keep everyone's spirits up and motivate us to keep going. In March, we will be doing this again. This time, we will give students a chance to make their own poster at student council meetings to include everyone in the school. And lastly, we are still running our cold weather gear drive. So if anyone has any donations, please drop them to Bellport High School, and you can label it for Miss Hoffman or Room 105. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ruda? Mr.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly mention Dr. Gianni's comments. I want to thank Senator White and Assemblyman DeStefano, who on short notice were able to put us into their schedule to meet with us over this budget crisis. So I attended with Ms. Hayes, Mr. Parker, Ms. Costa, Dr. Gianni. Personally, I felt like there was a strong willingness to help us, guide us through this process, and they were open to understanding what happened. They're going to need to know that to justify it, and it sounded to me like they were getting to work right away. So I thank Ms. Costa for sending over the information they requested. I believe they mentioned that their hope is to get a remedy put into the budget bill. So they wanted to get working on it right away, that it needed to be done. So just wanted to let everybody know that we did have what I thought was a productive meeting with our state representatives on this issue, and there was a willingness to help, and we tossed around a lot of ideas on how to do that. I also want to bring up as a side note, while scheduling that meeting, the person in Senator White's office who handled the scheduling was none other than former student ex officio board member Cassidy Greco. So I thought that was kind of a really fun coincidence. And Bryn, you got big shoes to fill, right? So no, but it was kind of neat to have a former student board member be a part of that. So, and that was it. That's all I got. Thank you.
Just one question or comment. Can we schedule a legislative committee meeting following so we can discuss?
Yeah, sure. I was hoping we were going to have some communication from them at this point. I'm sure we could. I mean, we really, I think the legislative committee at this point needs to, we have marching orders to fine tune the other priorities and present them to them as well. So.
I think it would be helpful, to keep the lines of communication open so that you can share with the committee themselves,
Sure.
what happened and the information that was shared. I think that would be helpful.
And if I could add to that for the benefit of the legislative committee, while there was not a whole lot of discussion about it, I think that they do have a recognition that there are things that need to be done on the state level to help with regard to school funding in general. And so my hope is that this is going to be an opportunity for our legislative committee to be working with the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Legislative Committee and also the State School Boards Association Legislative Committee, because they're advocating for needed state law changes in order to help with regard to school financing. And so I just wanted to share my reaction to that my hope is that this is going to go beyond just the immediate issue that we're dealing with.
Thank you.
And I guess my turn is, I did go to the third grade horse concert at Brookhaven Elementary School and thoroughly enjoyed it and was just astounded at what these children and their teachers are able to do. So that was the fun part. Then there've been other business meetings involved with regard to strategic planning, a curriculum committee, and teaching and learning by the assistant superintendent of curriculum is what I meant to say. And that all of the minutes of those advisory committee meetings are posted for the benefit of board members. Okay. Mr. Trent.
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay.
I just want to add to the comments made about Senator White and Stefano. Sorry. I was very, very happy with how productive the meeting was, and I too hope we walked away with just a good feeling knowing, or feeling at least, that they would be working to help us navigate our way through this field, this journey. So again, thanks to those two and Chris for setting it up and whatnot.
Ms. Felice?
Thank you. Okay, so on February 10th, I attended a complimentary webinar hosted by the New York State School Board Association on the school board's role in curriculum development. Normally 200 to 250 people attend these seminars, but this day, the seminar was attended by 850 Board of Education members. It was mentioned at the opening of the seminar that this is because terms can mean different things to different people. To some, it might mean that courses are taught in school, others might mean it's in the classroom. But the most important issue was that conversations must take place and curriculum must start with a common sense understanding of what terms we're talking about as we underpin and set the foundation for curriculum development and implementation. One of the key speakers was a superintendent from the Mohawk Valley who spoke how she makes it her mission to reach out to the community. Now, her school district is a quarter of what ours is. But nevertheless, she did indicate, which I thought was interesting, she meets with those candidates who want to run for the Board of Education as soon as they submit a petition to run, and also allows those people to meet with the district clerk and the assistant superintendent of business to provide them with time to ask questions about the district before they run, to try to dispel any myths that are out there. She expressed her opinion in establishing a network of communicators for the district that include both staff members and students. On curriculum development, she hosts open house with repeated updates to dispel any rumors that are circulating throughout the district. And her belief is the best techniques to be successful is to have a good parent and community involvement to communicate the what, when, where, and how curriculum and community and policies are developed. And then she also gives credibility to those people that are working and are involved. Other speakers demonstrated how they develop community trust through roundtable committees, information sessions, and bringing outside community leaders into the process. Conflict resolution was often resolved through an open and honest public comment period. It was believed that communication today lacks the skills of talking to each other instead of at each other. It was also mentioned how beneficial it was to educate community members on Board of Education and district legal obligations and consequences when and if those obligations are not met. Later that same evening, I attended the Teaching and Learning Committee and shared just some of what I've just shared with you. I also want to thank Mr. Budgett's class who presented Generation Citizen, learning the process of civic engagement and how to effectuate change. Of the change that these students just so happened to mention this night in these presentation is, they would like to see a change in the curriculum to include a class on financial literacy. I believe that's what they called it, correct?
Yes.
Financial literacy, so they can have a better understanding of the finances and the loan process as they begin to set it on their own and on their way to college. So nothing could have been more timely. And then in conclusion, I just want to say I attended the girls' varsity basketball game on senior night, I believe it was last Friday, where 3 seniors were proudly recognized by their fellow teammates, of which Bree made one of those presentations and made a heck of a shot at that game. That she didn't even believe was going to go in, but it went in. It was a very spirited game, and everybody, it was nice to get back into the environment where people could be together. Some of the conversations that happened in the spectator stands included those who are concerned about when the mask mandate is lifted, because they feel that students are going to have self-esteem issues, and I'm sure our district is well aware of that. Students are already saying that they don't want to take the mask off. They feel they look better behind the mask. And those were some of the comments that really startled me while I was at the game, but I was grateful to have heard them, to be able to share them. So something that, certainly our superintendent, assistant superintendent of curriculum and guidance staff and social workers need to be made aware of in moving forward. as we navigate through these uncharted territories. And then in conclusion, I just want to thank Athletic Director Frankie, who was, in full gear and full mode of being the athletic director, for greeting me when I walked into the high school and reintroducing me to the coaching staff. Thank you.
And just to remind everybody, the curriculum webinar is online, and I think everybody gets the email from the New York State School Boards Association that has the link. If you don't have it, you can reach out to me, and I'll forward it to you. Okay. Next, we have, this is our public commentary session for agenda items. Members of the public have up to 3 minutes per person in order to make comments to the board. And, because I do know that we're listened to online, just to remind people that any email that is sent to the board for our attention is shared with every single board member and the superintendent so that we know what the comments are. And we have those things in mind whenever we're discussing the issues that affect our district. So I think we've got 2 comment cards. The first would be Tony Huffine.
Go to the podium?
Yep.
Okay.
If you're comfortable there, or do you want to sit and talk to us?
No, it's better, Ed, because first of all, masks for hearing impaired are horrendous, because what we depend on too is to read lips, and that has been taken away. So it's very muffled what you're saying, and I have a hearing aid in. Okay. I'm here because of the budget, and do you mind if I hold it out like this? My first question is, are students wearing masks in school, in the elementary school? So is that still in place?
I didn't read the full information about our public comment period, but it's for you to speak to us about your concerns. And if there's, questions of information, it may be something that, the superintendent can answer quickly, but normally.
Yes or no, it's fine.
Yes.
Yes, which, just my comments is, as a reading teacher, teaching reading to elementary school kids in masks is impossible. They need to look at your lips, they need to hear the sounds, and it makes it impossible. And I feel like we're falling behind times. That's my personal comment.
Okay.
Just quickly, but throwing all these numbers, Ray, and I thank you, Cheryl, for your inquiries. We're all confused about the amount of money that the district is in the hole for. Okay? Not only are we confused, but we're furious, because why, at this point in time, are we finding out about this? If anyone that I've spoken to relative to what the deficit, don't trust what I'm sorry, Mr. Gianni, but what you said, the information you gave to the newspaper, that it just was gobbled, and it didn't make any sense at all, and it doesn't address the issue. Why at this time, if you're the superintendent of schools, and we have a finance person, now do we find out that this short has come to be, okay? And what do we do about it? Well, anybody that I've talked to, and I'm pretty active in the community, they're going to vote the budget down, guys. They are not going to let this go through. So if in fact we now have a CPA, and the whole thing is looking at numbers perhaps differently, why are the other districts looking at them differently? How come they're all not showing a short? And I have to go back to 2005, when I recall that we floated a loan for improvements. And I think it was for 20 years. Is that expired? It has.
That's going to be part of the presentation later. You'll be getting a lot of information through the
As to
PowerPoint.
why, we're gonna get information as to why the short came up. Why isn't any other district in this hole? And we cannot afford it. We cannot. We have young people who are struggling with having young children. They can't afford that kind of an increase. I'm a retired individual, and people in my category can't afford that increase. What are you doing to the district? How did this happen? Okay? And I have to address the salaries in central office are horrendous compared to other school districts. Not only that the money that goes into the salary is hidden. And I'm going to give you, the board, questions you can ask. Because that stuff that you don't see, that is money that goes into salaries, that's hidden. So I'll pass that out to you with the vision of the clerk, okay? Because the salaries are much higher than you think you would be. And I know that for a fact. I've been in this business a long time, since 1975, and I was an administrator. Go ahead.
3 minutes?
3 minutes? Okay.
Thank
All right, I just want to assure you that the budget's not going to pass. Unless you do something coming up, it's not, and I have my finger on the pulse, I'm in church, I'm active in church, active in the community, it's not going to happen. The reasons given fall flat, all right? Somebody should be in charge, superintendent, the finance person. If this is a whole different look at financing, a way of looking at it, why isn't any other district in this hole? Okay, and the things on the budget that I really have to question.
I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes expired a
come
long
on,
time
Pam.
ago.
What about security? $1 million this year? Security? Where does that come from? Athletic transportation, $351,000 as compared to transportation for academic areas. All right, I'll just be quiet. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I'm gonna ask
I'm glad you're here to listen to the presentation, because I'll be interested to hear from you afterwards to
Well,
see
it
your
actually just
reaction.
complicated things. Can you pass this out? Board members only. Thank you.
Okay,
It was very muddled, by the way.
we have our June Johnson is our next.
Hi, I've lived in the district for 48 years, and I'm very concerned, and I'm questioning why the letter regarding what has happened with the deficit was only sent out to people that have children in the district and not the whole community. I have access to the computer. I don't go on checking the district all the time, the district site. Why wasn't it sent to all of us?
I think that question could be answered, because I think it's been pretty
Okay.
popular. Just my request,
All right.
if that could be simply answered.
Well, I mean, to send it out would be doing a mailing, like a budget mailing, which is an extreme expense, and we've never done anything like that before.
I think the point is that if anybody,
Nor has there been a deficit like this
But,
before.
but,
This
but
is
let
an
me,
extraordinary time.
I think the portal is what really
Yeah,
needs to be
so-
discussed.
Right, the portal.
Yeah, so, I mean, we addressed this a few years ago, so any community member that wanted to get those notices could sign up for the portal.
I think you're talking to people that have computers that are savvy as per what's going on in the district that will access that information. But the broad majority of people don't. They're working hard, they're retired, maybe they don't go on their computer to check it out. As Ms. Felice said in that conference that she had gone to, they were stressing community involvement and trust. And for me, that doesn't bode well with this issue at all.
Well,
I'm a
we did,
retiree
we
in the
did,
district.
we
I
did-
know a lot of senior citizens that are on fixed incomes.
we-
I know,
We
it's,
we did share it with the local people, and I do want to just say, you know, we get criticized for not being transparent, right? So we're very transparent in what happened with the state aid. We are in the very beginning of this budget process. We are not, just because us being transparent with what it could be, doesn't mean that's what it's going to be. In fact, I'm kind of glad, because it'll get people involved in the budget process, because we never see anyone. But I encourage you to stay involved, to pay attention, see what we're going through, and see how we resolve the problem. And the problem will get resolved.
Excellent. That's all very well and good. Trust me, I'm a doctor. No, I'm just being snide right now. But anyway, I think that to be transparent would be to allay the fears and concerns that are right now. Instead of sit back, wait, trust us, we've trusted. Where are we now?
Well, that was
Amen.
the purpose of the letter. I'm sorry I didn't convey that.
Okay. Well, then I would suggest that a letter be sent out to all the residents.
But I think that after tonight,
What?
we have said there will be follow-up communications, much like the first letter, as the process goes forward. And as you will hear from the presentation, the sky is not falling here. So,
Okay, and so.
and that, and once the presentation is done, then there will be the ability to send the facts out and distill it in another letter.
To
And
everyone, to all the residents?
we're gonna still, we don't have a plan for doing mailings. The cost is very expensive to mail to every person in the district. Are you suggesting that
Yes, I am.
you would like to have us incur that expense to have these letters?
I am suggesting that everyone in the district be apprised of what is going on, yes.
If you want the budget passed.
Anyway, I've said my,
Okay.
peace be with you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for making us think about that. And the only other thing we did have one email. It's a non-agenda item that would be read since the writer is not here tonight. All board members already have a copy of the email. And I would propose that the board just go ahead and take that now, even though it should be on the agenda at the very end. We may as well just do it now.
Yeah.
Is that all right with everybody?
Sure.
Okay. So, Ms. Flynn, can you do that, please?
Certainly. So this email is from Kathleen Spence. Good evening, Dr. Gianni and board members. I would like to take a moment to express my concerns about the lack of 8th grade middle school events. It has been a long-standing tradition that each grade, 6th, 7th, and 8th, was offered the opportunity to attend grade-level field trips. Prior to COVID, administration began canceling various field trips for many reasons without considering the negative effect it would have on the children. Field trips at the middle school have been chopped away to nothing. BMS administration has used the cost of these trips in the past to cancel field trips with little to no fundraising opportunities for students. Now BMS administration is using the long-standing excuse of COVID. I cannot understand how the BMS administration is getting away with using COVID as an excuse when the Friday, February 11, 2022 COVID case email stated that one child in the entire district contracted COVID. This is just one example of the continual emails we receive daily citing low COVID numbers. As a teacher in the neighboring district, I am witnessing students as of late this month attend sporting competitions in Disney World, school trips to Syracuse, and a planned Dorney Park trip for music in the parks. It is sad to see those children get these life experiences and not our children at BMS. At the last PTA meeting, administration was asked about trips and we were told no. We asked about the 8th grade dance, we were told that we needed to see with COVID. We asked about the ice cream social or barbecue and were also told we need to see with COVID. No answers with no plans. We are almost in March and there are no definite celebratory day trips, dances, or barbecue ice cream social events for our 8th grade students. It is unacceptable that administration is continuing to use COVID as the excuse. I encourage the board to think about the social and emotional well-being these events offer our children and strongly encourage the BMS administration to offer more of these events. Please do what is in the best interest of our 8th grade students. Thank you. Kathleen Spence.
Thank you.
Ms. Hicks, can I just make a comment to my colleagues on the board? I just want to stress some of the comments that were made earlier, that I personally think that it's important that we really work on our trust when it comes to building this budget. And I think that if sending out letters, mailing them to our constituents is a way to improve that trust, we absolutely need to do it, because should our budget fail, we will no doubt be in the worst position than anything, even a 2%, anything. So I feel like we really need to work on trust like we've never done before. So I just wanted to share that.
Can I make a comment to that?
Sure.
There's just two things, and Karen brings up a couple good points that I was looking for an opening to kind of, to say it. And there's two things that are bothering me about all the discussions within the community. Number one, nothing's been proposed yet. I mean, we're not there yet. It's just, we don't know what the budget's gonna look like. Last year at this point, we had a $13 million gap. We presented a balanced budget at that time. There's a long way to go. Everybody should be concerned and everybody should be paying attention. But this doomsday scenario that seems to have taken over the community is a little tough. We're just not there yet. There's a lot of things, you heard me talk about our legislators are looking to put something in the budget bill. Budget's not expected to pass till April 1st. Okay, we're not gonna know anything, all that. I'm sure we're gonna have an indication of what's gonna happen, but it still has to pass come April 1st. And then, when people talk about trust and transparency and all those things, and I've heard it for so many years up here, I struggle with that because this board for many years has tried to do a lot to get the community involved. And we sit here, we have 50 people watching on YouTube, and I'm sure people will watch the recording. We have 2 community members that I can see here. But there's plenty of discussion on Facebook. This administration and this board for a number of years has packed up their bags and gone on the road to PTAs, to civic associations, community groups, and presented the budget. And that started when I was president one year, and we were making presentations to rooms full of 2 and 3 people. So and I don't mean to chastise the community in any way, that's not what I'm saying. It's frustrating when people say transparency, communication, when we're trying to provide a lot of information and people only want it on their terms. And I get frustrated with that, right? There is a process. This board talked about it for a long time, how to communicate better with the community. That's what the YouTube channel's about. That's what the community porthole and the Blackboard Connect is about. And it's not being utilized, and we're getting blamed for it. And it's frustrating. Everybody knows, much to the chagrin of some of my colleagues, I speak to a lot of people on public forums, on social media a lot, because I get it. I do understand. I know what it's like to be a busy parent with kids in school, and everybody's busy. So it is kind of hard, and we've become a society and a community that wants all this information spoon-fed to us when we want it and how we want it. And that makes our job almost impossible to make everybody happy. So I'm open to suggestions and conversations as how we do that. I've been talking about budget forums and things for years. And it's just hard when the community doesn't come out and hear what we have to say. It's not easy to talk to an empty room. We used to sit in the middle school with 5 people in there, and again, it's busy, so I understand. I'm not blaming the people for not being involved. But don't blame us for not presenting the information, because if you have a better idea, let us know. But aside from knocking on every door in the community, I don't know what it is at this point. So.
There've been changes over the years. And one change that has particularly happened during the pandemic was the permission to have virtual meetings, because we could not accommodate social distancing in our spaces and have a meeting. And in order for the board to meet, we need to be in a relatively confined space, because I realize people in the audience have trouble hearing. Well, board members can have similar problems like that when they're spread out. So being, from a physical point of view, being in a space like this works. The benefit of having it on YouTube is people can watch our meetings at home and on their own terms at whatever hour suits them, as opposed to having to come out and sit in the audience. So I see pluses and minuses for all of this, but, and I think we will take it under advisement about whether we've gotten the message out as best we can, and then look for members of the community to recognize that the information is being provided. This is how it's being provided. If there's a way it can be done better, we're certainly open to trying to consider that.
Just to my point though, Ann, like the last meeting where we discussed this, 589 people watched it on YouTube. There's 17,000 registered voters in our district. So, and we average, I think, 3,000 people come out and even vote for our budget. Those are all the points I'm trying to make. And I think at least when we discussed that letter, my hope was to say to the community, hey, come out and be a part of this with us. See what's happening. We're not hiding anything. We talked about it tonight. We sat with our legislators and, you know, we basically explained it. If everybody wants, I mean, the what happened and how it happened, I know everybody wants, you know, a head on the spike right now. We got bigger problems right now to balance the budget. We can talk about the who did what, when. This whole thing, come on. I mean, we've had a break from this for a long time, and now we got to hear comments from the peanut gallery.
Okay, I'm gonna
So-
have to
so-
stop this because the purpose of commentary from the public is for them to comment to us and not for us to respond, so.
Well, I'm just making
your
general
point-
comments
but
about
your-
it. This nonsense has got to stop.
I'm sorry, but this is conduct that's not permitted in our boardroom. So I'm gonna ask that we move forward. We all have an understanding about the need for having communication to the public, and if there are any other ways that we can explore to make that available, we'll be talking about that and listening to what other suggestions administration may have. And with that said, I think we do need to move on and do our budget presentation. And, okay, that's you, Dr.
That's
Gianni.
it. Okay, thank you. Our first item for discussion this evening is our third in a series of budget presentations. And it is a presentation of the review of expenditures for administration, transportation, and unallocated codes. It will be made by Ms. Costa, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Management Services. And you may take it away, Ms. Costa.
Thank you, Dr. Gianni, and hello, Board of Education and Community. Tonight's our third budget presentation, our budget development cycle. I thought before we got started in the actual third presentation that we do a little recap of what happened at our last meeting. I'm just going to speak to that. At our last meeting, we reviewed revenues and the tax cap formula calculation. We discussed the decline in our state aid and how it was mainly attributable to the decline in building aid. Upon review, we learned that building aid declined $5.9 million. Back in 2006 through 2010, the district embarked on $110 million in bonded capital project work. $110 million in bonds issued were taken out with 20-year payment terms, and the state paid building aid over 15 years to the district. Next year is year 16, and $5.9 million of building aid is ending, but the bond payments remain. This has created a budget strain for 2022-23. I just want to step back and explain the relationship between bond payments, the state, and the community. The state partners with districts that do capital work in the form of building aid. Currently, South Country receives 76 cents on the dollar from the state in the form of building aid. The remaining 24 cents on the dollar is the community responsibility. When bonds are voted on and authorized by the community authorizes not only for the capital project construction work to begin, but that they will pay their share of the cost. To date, the district has not come to the community for any of their share of the 2006 through 2010 capital construction costs. So a positive unintended consequence of the 20-year bonds versus a 15-year building aid mismatch may be that to date, we have not yet gone to the community for any of their share of the $110 million in voter-approved construction costs. Now I'm going to switch gears. I'm switching gears because at the last board meeting, the board asked the administration to look at using additional fund balance and reserves, given our budget strain. Managing fiscal health and fund balance includes not only looking at what we have saved in the past, but it also includes building budgets in the future that replenish the use of fund balance and reserves. Tonight, you'll see a first draft of expenditures that overall are less than the prior year. Usually, at our first draft, the total expenditures have increased at least $5 million over the prior year. The administration has begun to build a budget that will not replenish all the scheduled use of fund balance and reserves. This is the first way that we are using additional fund balance next year by planning not to fully replenish. But please note that a district cannot continue to build budgets that rely on fund balance for an extended period of time. Tonight, there is a long-range financial planning slide that allows us to begin to see the impact of our potential decisions on our long-range fiscal health. Tonight, you will hear me say, the budget has been aligned to actuals, and that means that we are building the 22-23 budget knowing that we may not be able to replenish all of our reserves and fund balance next year. This is the first way that we are planning to use additional fund balance. So now I'm going to go into the presentation. So here we are in our third presentation.
Ms. Gossett,
Yes.
can I just, how often is that done? Is this new, or have we done that in the past? Budgeted to actual expenses?
I believe in hearing some past stories from administration in the past that there were different varied levels of dependency on fund balance and reserves, and there were adjustments made. But in this particular instance, when you align your budget to your actuals and you are not building in to replenish all your fund balance and reserves, you're making a decision to use them, permanently use them.
And that's not sustainable.
Not sustainable long-term. And we'll talk about that in more detail as we go through the presentation, okay? So here we are in our third presentation for the season. Tonight, we're going to discuss expenditures. In particular, we're going to go into detail in three functional areas, and that is administration, transportation, and what is called the unallocated budget areas, which is the majority of our benefits in the district. So here we are. This is our budget development calendar. We're on our third meeting with an expenditure review and a detailed look at administration, transportation, and unallocated budget costs. So what will we cover today? Today, we're going to look at the administrative budget. We're going to look in detail at the transportation budget. We're going to look at our unallocated budget, which includes benefits, debt service, and interfund transfers. We're also going to look at our revenues and look at tax rate estimates as we did at our last meeting. We'll continue that as we move through the budget cycle. Here's our triangle. Our educational program is our foundation, and in the end, it will be balanced with our revenues and our expenditures equaling. And here we will talk about expenditures for the first time tonight. So in the administration codes, here are the areas that fall under administration: Board of Education, District Clerk, the annual budget vote and trustee elections. Central administration covers these following areas: Superintendent, Business, Audit, Purchasing, Legal, Human Resources, Public Relations, Facilities, Mail, Administrative Technology, Insurance, which is Property and Casualty Insurance, Association dues, and Boces admin costs. So we're going to go into each of those functional areas. Here's our Board of Education budget. It is relatively the same from last year, minor change, but these are obligations under the functional area of Board of Education. District Clerk. These are contractual obligations of the district. It includes a charge for part of the cost of our district clerk, and the other part of our district clerk is charged to the superintendent functional area. Annual budget and trustee election. This is our vote that we will do in May. These are the costs related to that vote. We see a minor increase here for legal notices and advertising as our requirement to print in both Spanish and English have increased those costs slightly, and those are reflected here.
I'm sorry, Ms. Costa, could you go back one slide, please? I advanced too fast. Yes, the district clerk. Can't read your number. Okay, the district clerk is paid out of two separate funds. What's the second fund? Are you going to show that tonight too, or is that another?
I just said she's charged to the district clerk functional area and the
You did say that, I
superintendent.
apologize, I was
Yeah, that's all right.
trying to look for that.
Actually, we're just about at that slide, the next slide.
Okay, this is the point I want to make to the Board of Trustees. I've mentioned this before, and it's just something that the district clerk, I believe, has a sole obligation to the Board of Education and not split between the Board of Education and the superintendent. And I've never liked that number that it was split. I would like to see the full salary under and assigned to the Board of Education. Thank you.
I think that gets to the function of the clerk, and I'd like to hear, when you get to the next slide, whether there's an accounting reason why it's handled that way.
Sure. The next slide is where, this slide is where the functional area of the district clerk is in addition to the other functional area. This includes, the superintendent functional area includes contractual obligations of.
Can I just ask, for those that are watching on the YouTube channel, are they seeing a shared screen right now? Or are they relying on seeing the slide presentation?
It's hard to see, but it looks like a shared screen. You don't see you just see the room, so that's blurred by the lights.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I'm sitting right across from it and I can't see what it says.
It is in the
It's
public
posted.
content, about in the
It's in
board
the-
It's
docs.
posted.
So it's posted on.
So they can look through it.
They
on
can
the-
look
Oh,
through,
yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's public content.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so we see this area, the superintendent's functional area has a decline based on anticipated contractual obligations of the district. And in answer to Ms. Lee's question is, I'm pretty sure that the district clerk also has an appointment through civil service that involves two functional areas, which includes district clerk, and another functional area is her appointment, and that's why her costs are.
You believe or you know?
I'm pretty,
Could we confirm that, please?
yes.
And so that would be in this third line that you're referring to? The salary clerical office of the superintendent of schools?
124160, correct.
So that includes the two salaries, not just one?
The non-instructional, yes, costs of the superintendent's office.
So correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember when this started, it was determined that the clerk's position was a part-time position? Am I right about that?
But for whatever reason, years past, the clerk got reduced from full-time to half-time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was later addressed before my time to just split it into two spots. And it's been like that ever since. Quite honestly, the clerk is the board's clerk,
Right.
not my clerk, other than the district website that she operates, which is for the district, right? But she doesn't work in my office.
Could-
The
could-
board policy, your work, and the website.
So maybe what we can do is just to get, if you could look into the financial accounting requirements, what would need to be done to get it all back so that it is all on that one slide dealing with the district clerk.
I think Mr. Briggs on what her appointment
If
is
you,
with civil service.
if you can double check that, before our next meeting.
Okay, so
Thank you, Madam President.
move to the business area. These are contractual obligations of the business office. You'll actually see there's a slight decline in the Boces line. We aligned budget to actuals, which, in that functional area, so we're seeing a slight decline. We're seeing about the same cost in the business office from last year to this year. Next functional areas are audit.
I'm sorry, hold on, I'm sorry. You said slight decline, but I'm seeing it.
It is, I'm sorry,
an
it's not a
increase.
slight decline, it's a slight increase.
It's a slight increase.
Couple $100, yes, but in the one
Couple
line item
$1,000.
BOCES, in the line item BOCES, which is 41310 490, there's a reduction in that line item as we have aligned those budgets to actuals.
But the overall budget for the business office is $13,000 more.
$402.
I was gonna say almost 500, yeah.
$402.
Right. I'm not seeing that, okay.
The total is.
I wonder if that's a oh, no, it's not, never mind.
No.
Is it correct?
No, it's right. I thought I saw a misprint, but my eyes are.
Okay.
But that's not, there's more employees under the jurisdiction of the Assistant Superintendent of Business. You're gonna go into those as well?
That includes the employees of the business office.
But don't you have more responsibilities to, say, custodial staff, responders, don't they answer
Those
to
are
you
different
too?
functional areas,
So we're gonna talk about those.
yes. The audit functional area, this includes our required 3 audits, external, internal, and claims audit. These costs are based on the RFP results. RFPs are good for 5 years, and we are still within those 5 years, and those are the costs, the known costs for next year. And that is a slight decline from the prior year. In our Treasury and Purchasing area, these are the contractual obligations of those staff, of the treasurer and the purchasing agent, and also we subscribe to Boces for some bidding services. That is the Boces bidding costs. In our legal functional area, this includes a 3% increase, anticipated increase in our legal costs next year, and it's an estimate for next year.
So it always bothers me, the legal retainer, how that goes up each year, considering the non-legal retainer goes up so much higher. I don't think there's a need to increase the general counsel retainer. But you may go on. I did miss something else now that I'm looking at it, and I apologize because I'm trying to follow your slide and look at here, and I missed another slide. Was the slide on the superintendent's salary changed? Because I have a different figure in the slides that I printed out.
That salary is an estimate based on conversation with Eastern Suffolk Boces, who's performing the search as to what a range, that is within a range of what superintendents in Suffolk County.
Well, we didn't have that conversation yet. The board didn't have that conversation yet. How did you have that conversation?
Because I spoke to Julie just to make sure that our number was within a range of what we might settle in, so that I had an adequate estimate of the budget. It may not be where the board settles, but I wanted to I didn't want to, leave it at 275 if that wasn't adequate either.
Okay, and so it got reduced. Are you back on that slide?
It's 225.
So you reduced it to 225. My concern to my colleagues on the board is this puts a number out there when we didn't even start interviews yet for a new superintendent. And is that going to turn away some of those applicants because the salary has been reduced without the board's knowledge or approval?
Okay, I don't think it would, because this is like a budgeted item. It doesn't mean that that's the figure that it will be. But the flip side of it, if we had put it in at the current salary, is there would be an expectation on the part of applicants about what kind of salary would be out there.
Well, we also have a month that's going to overlap. So we have that to consider as well. The other question I have is why in 2020-21 the car allowance was not listed, but I believe part of the contract, but now in 2022 and 2023 it was, or was that the subsequent new agreement?
It was part of his agreement even back in 2021, you're right, but in 21-22, regarding ESSA and transparency reporting, we got indicated that we need to charge it to a different place in the budget, and we did start doing that in 21-22.
Okay, just explain ESSA again, what's the
ESSA
acronym?
and transparency are federal and state regulations on how the federal and the state government require us to file these reports. ESSA is federal, transparency is state, and basically we file with them all of our costs. They're trying to do this federally, they're trying to do it so that they can compare districts across anywhere in the country and try and see what it is, maybe an average cost to educate a student. But to do that, there's a lot of conversation about how to align how you record things.
Okay.
So we get feedback from both the state and the federal government on maybe we should revise how we report things, and then we take that feedback and we present it.
Okay. So to those applicants who may be listening, don't worry about that line. Is that what we're saying? Go on. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we were at legal, so, I think sorry. Okay, so this was legal, and we talked about that. That includes an anticipated increase. Our human resources department, this includes a 4% overall increase to the functional area. It includes contractual increases and additional support requests. And again, I just want to start by saying, this budget includes all budget builders' requests that are out there. Administration in the district, at this point, after the budget first comes out, is when we begin to look in detail at everybody's request. But this includes all budget builder requests in the district. So that's human resources. Public relations, this has an overall increase of 1%, which is basically the BOCES increased cost for our relationship with Syntax and includes the printing of the school calendar. Facilities and operations. This is the largest area under administration that we will look at tonight. This is the facilities and operations and maintenance budget. The first thing I want to bring to note of the board is that the security costs for the district are moving to a new functional area. So again, in relation to ESSA and transparency, should be recorded in code A1622. They're currently in A1620. You'll see in a slide to come that we have moved those costs as we go forward so that we're in compliance with ESSA and transparency reporting. And then in addition, the areas that I just highlighted in green, which include the contractual cost of facilities and many of the commodities, fuel oil, gasoline, electric, all of those items we talked about that are highly impacted by inflation, you see that the increase in this functional area is basically related to inflationary increases that we expect in all those areas. And for the last 2 years, the largest item here outside of salaries is the contractual line for $1.8 million. For the last 2 years, we've held that line at $1.6 million, but we're really seeing the inflationary pressures of the vendors who come in and ask us to do things. Their costs are all rising. So we are addressing that here.
Quick question.
Sure.
The increase in the salary line for security, is that headcount increase or is that contractual increase?
Those are the last 2 years. You're going to see the new,
Oh, I'm sorry.
the
You know
new
what?
budget on another slide.
Got it, okay.
Okay, and I'll talk about the increase in security.
Thank you.
Before you move off that slide,
Sure.
the move of security overtime, 1620, 161, the
Yeah.
25,000, isn't that the same line that I asked about in the,
That is.
so, but there's 20,000 less in that line? That
No,
you
no,
didn't,
you're
that
gonna
you weren't able to identify where that went or why that was
Slides
necessary?
to come, you're going to see the security budget for next school year, and you will see that overtime line in it.
I guess I'm just a little confused, why isn't it here, I guess is my question.
Because we got correspondence from, when we did our S and transparency reporting, that it should be.
Oh, it's in a
recorded.
different code now?
It's in a different
Okay,
code.
thank you.
We're not getting rid of security, you're going to see it. Just
No, I get it, I didn't think
couple
we were,
slides.
I got it,
Give it
okay.
a couple of slides, it's coming. Okay, so in facilities and operations, just so everyone aware, because these are our largest code, these are some of the costs that are charged to facilities, especially the large code, which is that now is being budgeted for $1.8 million. It has our abatement testing. Anytime there's we just had a flood in the high school over Martin Luther King weekend, all of those vendors that came in actually are charged to this code. We still have COVID costs related to supplies additional supplies we're buying, hand sanitizer, cups, masks, all those things are included here. And facilities is, every year they have equipment requests. Next year, the equipment request is a 2-year rollout plan to replace all the floor cleaning machines that are in the district. So it's a $105,000 request next school year, and a little less in the second school year. But that would replace all the floor cleaning machines, which really are failing, and we have to send them out to be fixed all the time. So this would be a replacement of that machinery for that department. So here we come to the new code for security. This is the functional area A1622 that we will be recording these costs in going forward. The budget for security is currently showing about an 18% increase, with us planning to look in detail at security. It includes responder overtime, which you see, at all the events that we have for athletics and other events. We have responders at those events, and currently, with the strain on labor and finding security guards are earning what they're making plus overtime if we have them work additional time, because we still have open security positions in the district, because we're having trouble finding staff to fill those. So this is the estimate for next year's budget.
Guys, I have a question. Do you have an exact number on how many open security positions we have at the moment?
5?
Thank you.
5.
I'm sorry, so, back to my original question. So, this increase includes overtime, which we saw was previously at 25K. Is that number that's factored in for overtime, and if you said it, I apologize, has that number been elevated?
It is elevated in next year's budget.
Okay, do we know what that is?
118.
Oh, 118 is here, but it's not in, okay, it's in, okay, I see it now, I'm sorry.
Okay?
So the responder salary at 1,126,400, is that the result of additional people or salary changes, contractual salary obligations?
It's related to the number of staff that we have a standard number of staff at the buildings and what they earn for their hourly rate.
Correct.
It's
So-
a 7-hour day.
So is that number going up, or is it staying?
Slightly, yes.
What's slightly?
Based on actuals. The prior number is, hang on, here's the deal. About $1,070,000 in the school year that we're sitting in now was our budget.
No, I get the number difference, I'm just wondering about the head count difference.
Oh, I don't think there's any additional headcount.
That's what I'm asking, there's no different
additional
people.
headcount.
This is contractual salary increases, that's what I was getting
Yes,
at, thank you.
yes.
So how did we go from $25,000 overtime, $25,000 in overtime? We took $20,000 of it away, and now we're at, for the proposed budget, $118,000.
It's more than that.
The
plus 13.
$118,000 is received from.
How much more is it?
Well, there's 2 lines for overtime.
Yeah.
Overtime responders athletics.
Oh, thank you for that
So it's
correction.
actually
132,000.
That number is from our budget builders, and like I started off saying that we are planning on looking at security in more detail and how much time our security guards are working some of these extra events.
We have spoken in the past about really knowing what every position does in the district, and especially going forward with this budget, I think we need to be ever mindful of that, because it's just not making sense to me.
Well, some of the additions in security also address the fact that, remember when we spoke about our capital projects in our prior meeting, and the fact that our software and some of our cameras are obsolete or broken. Well, this is the first time that we're budgeting for some equipment replacement and supplies and materials related to security guards that we haven't in prior budgets. So you're also seeing that here, of us addressing, building out the budget for security for the things that it also needs. And we will be looking at staffing and
That's minimal compared to the $100,000 increases in overtime. I think that's where my concern is, and I'm not saying we don't need it, I just want to understand why we need it, why did it go up so much, and that's really all I'm getting at.
yeah, we actually, on our list, security particularly, to take a hard look at it before we finalize the budget process.
Okay.
This is only its first blush of security as its new functional area.
And then how do chaperones factor into that? Because I know we have a mixture of security personnel, but we have faculty on a chaperone stipend.
So a
So,
budget line for chaperone costs.
understood. So I guess with such an increase in security at events, are you anticipating a drop in faculty chaperoning? Because if that goes up and this goes up, I mean, and I understand you haven't really sharpened the pencil, I think is what you're saying. But to have a plug-in number that's $100,000 increase is kind of hard right now. That's what I'm getting at. And these are the lines that pop off at community members and things like that. So I really want to, and again, I understand we haven't really sharpened our pencils yet, but it's kind of hard to have that answer right now where we are within the budget process. And I get it, but, so, okay.
So we can get a slide at a later meeting that would
And you'll see it as we move through the budget process, you'll see the areas change in total as we refine the estimates.
Thank you.
Okay, mail, our mail functional area, these are contractual increases. There's an overall decline of 24%. This is really due to a restructuring, which is a reduction in our mail carrier position. And this is reflected here in this budget going forward.
And the other half of his salary is paid out of where?
The other half, mail carrier services are now a half of a job and is done in conjunction with a custodial worker. A custodial worker is half the mail person and half the custodial worker.
That's the point I'm trying to raise. So so it's not as if we have a part-time courier. We have a, is that person still considered full-time?
Yes,
But he's paid both as a courier and a custodial.
correct.
And how do you monitor the hours that are spent in each?
Well, he comes in and his first job is to run around and do the mail in all the districts, and that takes a certain number of hours, and we know what that takes, and then they come back when they're done with all their mail runs, going to the post office and all, and then they begin their custodial functions.
And you're satisfied that that works adequately?
Yes.
Okay. Why is there a change in the postage line, the mailing line, from 2021 to 20, oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was the same year. Okay, so we had an increase in postage from 2021 to 21-22.
The rates have gone up, with posting in general, and that reflects that here.
But they're not going up for the next budget, and you're proposing to keep that line the same?
There hasn't been an increase in mail rates since last year.
Okay.
Announced.
Do you know what it costs to do a district-wide one-page mailing? Do you have any idea?
Depends if it's a bulk mail or we can't use bulk mailing rates, so that I would have to give you the price.
And you can do bulk mail as long as the mailing is exactly the same to every individual?
Nondescript mailing. Yes.
Okay. So, and it's significantly less than first-class postage. I don't recall what that number
Yeah,
is, do you?
I think it's like 55 cents for a regular mail.
Right,
30 cents for a bulk mail.
okay. So district-wide, so we have, what was the number you used
I think it's
before?
17,000 registered voters. That's not
Registered voters,
households,
but
though.
that's not households,
It's
right?
not households, so.
Do we know how many households we have in the district?
Not sure.
Could we look at that number? And the reason I raise it is, obviously, we want to try and improve how we're communicating. And I'm going to point to our libraries. Our libraries do a monthly newsletter to every household in the district. So, maybe we don't need a monthly newsletter, maybe we need a quarterly newsletter. But I think it's something we should explore.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving into administrative technology. There's been a 21% increase in the administrative technology area. The increases are related to cyber resources going forward and additional replacement parts needed for Chromebooks and laptops, given that we have one-to-one devices for every student. A number of replacement parts have increased, and that's really where and the rest of it is contractual increases for our employees.
Do any of these proposals that you have shown indicate an increase in staffing?
In the administrative area, no, but if budget builders in the buildings have requested additional resources in the first draft of the budget, they are in there.
Could you make sure the board is aware where that's going to occur, if we're going to increase staff and why?
Yeah, there's no increases in any of the administrative codes we're talking about today.
There's not?
No.
Okay.
They're all.
So all the increases we're seeing here are contractual?
Yes, and any increases in staff are in the instructional area.
And that'll be indicated when we
We're
get to
not
that
talking
presentation.
about that in detail tonight. Tonight is just, okay?
Yes.
We'll reveal a total number, but the detail is the next budget meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And now we're at insurance, property and casualty. These are insurance policies. This is an overall decline of 7% because I have aligned the budget to actuals. And while we have not received an increase from nicer yet, we believe that this will be able to cover our insurance costs for next year.
Could you just spell out, for those who don't know what NYSER acronym means?
New York Schools Insurance Reciprocal.
Thank
Those
you.
are most districts in the state of New York, not all, but most, participate in NYSER. And it's a pooled insurance, basically you're self-insured, and they are pooling all the resources of districts. And they cover you for with the policy. Some things go out to insurance carriers, but some of the policy limits are covered by them in a shared pooled way. And that's who we get our insurance through NYSER as an entity.
And save in premiums as a result,
Yes.
because it's self-insured. Well, due in part to the fact that it's self-insured. Thank you.
Okay. Next areas are association dues. These are the New York State School Board Association dues. The $25,000 budget for next year came directly from New York State School Boards. Our Boces admin and facility fees. There's a 2.6% increase here. We received this information directly from Boces. It is their share of the administrative and facility fees that they apportion to component districts. So we're responsible to pay their admin and facility fees. And that is directly from them for next year. Now we're going to move into our transportation codes in the district. This is the 5,000 functional area. We're going to talk about the administration area in transportation, the lease of the building, contractual services, field trips, Boces. Here we go, going into administration. So this is the administration of our transportation operations. There's a 27% decline in this area due to an aligning of our budget to actual, and the remaining is contractual increases. So we have aligned our budget to our actual, particularly in the area of bus monitors. You'll see that in the middle of the page. Our transportation lease, this is the lease of the garage we have for district buildings, and that lease payment is already determined with the landlord, and that is the lease payment for next year. It's a slight increase over the current year. Transportation contractual services. This is the transporting of our school-aged children to school. This is the big buses and the vans. So our big bus RFP was done in 2019-20. We're in next school year, we'll be in year 4 or 5 of that RFP. And our van RFP next year will be in year 3 of 5. And you'll see that this area slightly declined, and I think everybody knows transportation costs on our RFPs when we approved them increased at a decent rate. So this is a aligning budget to actuals in this code also, addressing that alignment. Field trips, athletics, and Boces. Basically, right now, athletic transportation is handled by Boces. We went out to RFP last year, and we did not receive any respondents, and we went to Boces. They've been providing the transportation, and that's been working out. We anticipate a slight increase in the rates from Boces next year. The awarded contractor for Boces for our region right now is Montauk Bus, and Boces is having trouble getting invoices from them for us to really get an accurate estimate of where we are half of the year this year to project next year. But in speaking with Boces, we anticipate this slight increase for next year. And the field trip and Boces costs, really the field trip costs, are from our budget builders. Those are student field trips that the buildings go on, and they manage that budget, with their students and their field trip request next year. And the Boces transportation is usually each year we have about one student who Boces ends up transporting that student. They go to a special program maybe out east, and the transportation is handled directly to Boces, and then they backfill us. So this is in anticipation. Usually each year we have at least one student who falls under those circumstances. And then we go to civic activities. This is a new functional area for the district. Again, this is an area that Our family engagement stipend, which is done by an employee of the district, will now be recorded here because this is the functional area that we should be recording it. And this is to align us to ESSA and transparency reporting that our civic activities are in this code, and that's $10,000. Now we're going to move into our unallocated budget codes. Unallocated really just means that it doesn't fit into transportation administration or instructional. That's really why it's called unallocated. It includes the following items: retirement, local and teachers, Social Security, workers' comp, insurances, which is our, insurances, which is our health, dental, life, and disability, unemployment, payouts to employees, which include terminal leave payouts and separations, debt service payments, which includes our bonds and our TANs. We'll go into each of those areas. Retirement system. There's an overall decline in this functional area of 9%, and this is because we have more closely aligned our budget to actuals. Just so that the board knows that retirement system costs are a function of our increasing salary, so as salary increases, and if the rates for the retirement system increase, it has a compounding effect. The next year, the employee retirement system rates are actually declining, even though our employee salaries are increasing. So that's a positive for us. And we have aligned that budget code to actuals. In our teachers' retirement system line, both the teacher salaries are increasing and the rates are increasing at TRS. Again, that has a compounding effect. But you will see that it is less than last year, and that is because we are aligning our budgets to our actuals. Social Security, workers' comp, life insurance, and unemployment. For the most part, these numbers have all stayed the same with the exception of our Social Security, which is in function of our increasing salaries. As salaries increase, we have to pay the matching employment taxes on those salaries, and Social Security is your FICA and your Medicare, and that's just a representation of that increase in cost for increasing salaries. And these are our insurances: health, dental, and disability. You'll see that overall, this line has the health insurance section has declined by 2%, even while the rates of Suffolk Schools Employees Health Plan have increased by 2.5%. And that is because we are aligning budgets to actuals here. And our dental insurance, we are self-insured. We're expecting a slight increase next year related to the cost of our dental program, and our disability is the same. We're anticipating approximately the same as this current year. Payouts, terminal leaves, deferrals, and others. We anticipate, we have had for the last 2 years, terminal leave payouts to employees of approximately $1.2 million. We never know exactly how many people are going to leave next year, but we anticipate that similar number going forward. We no longer have our deferral paybacks because that was the negotiated deferral paybacks to our administrative and teachers union that have gone away as we have completed that obligation.
Question on the payouts, please?
Yep.
Do you have a threshold? I think I've asked this before. Do you have a threshold of sick time, vacation payouts where you audit a timesheet when someone's leaving the district, when someone's leaving or retiring and they're owed a payout?
Every terminal leave payout is audited by multiple people. It starts in Mr. Briggs' office and then gets approved in our office and signed off by multiple people.
It is audited. And I was told in the past it wasn't, that it was, at least I think I was, and that it may show up on the annual audit.
Our
So in
auditors
this
will
case-
test transaction, but we look at every single payout and sign off on it individually, every single one.
So you're checking timesheets to make sure that it accurately reflects what the payout should be? Okay.
We run the reports in the system, we tie it to what's on there, we make sure everything works, that their hourly rates are right, their daily rates are right, and we calculate all those amounts.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Debt service and transfer payments. Here you'll see these are the debt service payments on our outstanding bonds. As you see, next year, our bond payments are approximately the same as this year, minor change. Our anticipated TAN interest that we will pay has gone up a little, and that is because we are anticipating, if you follow, it's out there, the Federal Reserve has anticipated 4 to 6 interest rate hikes next year in relation to inflation, and trying to quell inflation. That will translate into higher costs for us as we borrow money. And we're also seeing an increase in our transfer to school food service. The district contributes to the school food service program in the sense that the school food service program is not completely self-sustaining. This increase from last year to this year reflects an additional lunch period at the middle school being proposed and the additional staff that would be needed at that lunch period to oversee the monitoring of the students during the lunch period, and that's what that increase is for. So here we see in this slide, this is the first glance of our total expenditures for the district in all areas. What we spoke about today was administration, transportation, and the benefits, debt service, and interfund transfers line. You'll see here that curriculum and the civics line we spoke about. The only area we didn't speak about in detail today is curriculum, and we will be talking about that at our next meeting. But you will note that the overall budget from last year that we're operating in right now compared to next year is down $359,000. And as I started off and said, that normally at this stage, we would see a budget that had at least a $5 million increase, as that would be a normal increase to our budget, because we have built our budgets with a plan to replenish our fund balance and reserve. And as the budget has come down, we are planning to, that will not be happening going forward at the same pace that we were before. So now, how does this fit together into the district and the financial picture? These are our revenues and our expenditures, our gap, and also our estimated annual increase to a local homeowner. In the far right-hand column is our levy at 2.29%. We spoke about that at our last meeting. That would have been our levy without the add-on exclusions of $110 million in bond costs that are layered onto our tax cap calculation. So right here you'll see we have total revenues for the district anticipated of 140 million. Our total expenditures are 145 million, with a gap of $4.3 million. At a levy of 2.29%, the average homeowner in South Country Schools would see an annual tax increase of $135. At a tax levy of 4%, we see our revenues would go up to almost 142 million, compared to our budget of 145 million. The gap is about $3 million, and the average homeowner, our average homeowner in South Country Schools would see an annual tax increase of $221. And then we move to, if we moved forward with a levy of 5%, we see our revenues increase to 142.5 million. We still see our expenditures at 145. We have a gap still of 2.5 million. And so the average homeowner in South Country Schools, that would be a $271 annual increase to their taxes. And then at the levy limit of 7.76%, our revenues go up to 144 million. Our expenditures are still 145 million at this first glance, and we would have a gap of $780,000. And that cost to the average taxpayer in South Country Schools would be $409 for the year. That is a summary of how our revenues and expenditures and our estimated tax levy work together. Now we're going to move this forward to what the tax rate.
Don't go off that slide yet.
Okay.
Thank you for putting the slide numbers on each page. So this is slide number 36. This is the reason why the community reacted the way it did. And I appreciate that you want to show the board the options and some of the comments that were made by my fellow trustees that we're not there yet at the end. But this is what the community heard. And it wasn't mentioned before, but I'd like to mention it now. There was an article in Newsday about our budget. It was assured to the board that the district didn't present this information to Newsday. They must have picked it up from our YouTube channel. So the pros and cons of the increased communication. But this is the reason, this particular slide is the reason that the community is up in arms, because all they see is the full tax levy of 7.76%, that, you know, to close the budget gap, that's what's gonna be needed, and why we need the enhanced communication. I just want you to understand, for those administrators who don't live in the district, what we're hearing in the streets. So please reassure the community in these presentations and presentations going forward that you gave it to us as information, but it doesn't, the board certainly hasn't voted on it. The board certainly isn't in approval of it. And it's just there to show what the options are. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, so we move past the slide, just as information. These are the 19 districts in the town of Brookhaven. This is just for the board, the community to see where South Country's tax rate falls in comparison to our districts. And if you actually see on the far right-hand corner, the dollars that are there is what our average taxes would be if the average homeowner lived in, let's use the one at the top, Bayport Blue Point. The same home in Bayport Blue Point as South Country would pay $7,624 a year in taxes, where the South Country average homeowner pays $4,998. It's just to show community where our tax rate falls in regard to the 19 districts within the town of Brookhaven.
See, now I know you don't live in the area, because you can't compare South Country to Bayport. Bayport is one income structure, essentially, where South Country is much more diverse. So it's just you're mixing apples and oranges
Well,
here.
this comes from the town of Brookhaven themselves.
No, I understand that, but the Bayport community, Bayport Blue Point community is much different than the South Country community in a whole host of ways. In a whole host of ways. And the bottom line is, regardless of what Brookhaven Town comparison of taxes is, the bottom line is, we already told the community it's possible they're gonna see a 7.76% increase. That's the problem in building this budget. So we're operating, instead of being on the offense, we're operating on defense right now. And that's the challenges that we face for the Board of Trustees, because we live here.
It's not just because we live here, it's a challenge for the board, because had we not indicated what the worst-case scenario would be, then the feedback would be that we're not being transparent about building our budget. So I'm glad that we got this slide. I know this came from the discussion that the board had after the presentation last time, was to lay it out so that we would actually see the dollar figures for the impact. And so thank you for putting it out like this.
If I can just add a comment to it, because I tend to agree with you to an extent that the number, you know, that dollar, that percentage, that's the only thing anybody focused on, right? And that's my frustration when and then people say transparency. And the administration hears that, and the administration gives all the information so that they're transparent. I have a hard time faulting the administration. I know what you're saying, it's like a catch-22, right? It's what everybody focused on. But man, if we don't put that out there, and then we talk about it 2 weeks from now as a possibility, because maybe that's the only option and we don't know, we're sitting here with egg on our face saying we didn't talk about it. And I think that's what I'd hoped the letter would have achieved, and I think it probably did for some and didn't for others, was to say, this was an option. It's not, I mean, I'm not comfortable passing along a 7.76% tax increase to anybody in the community. But you have to be watching this meeting to hear me say that. So I don't know, how, it's kind of a catch-22. I get your point. What are we supposed to do?
But I think if I may just respond to Mr. Pacini, what we have to remember is what led up to that. It's like, we didn't know that we were gonna have this $5.9 million shortfall that netted out to what, 4.1 at this point? And that's the piece. It's like, how did we not know? And it was mentioned in going forward in the letter, appropriately so, okay, what are we gonna do going forward? But how did we get here? And that's the transparency piece that we all have to be mindful of.
And
And I
at
think
this
it's
point, we don't have a full answer yet.
And-
That's still part of the process going forward.
And that's a crummy answer, but it's the truth, right? So it really stinks. Listen, I've been here 10 years. Nobody's more upset about this than me, believe me. That 10 years of all these presentations and these treasurer's reports and everything else, and nobody picked up on this till now. Believe me, I'm upset about it as well, but what else, I don't know how else we really approach
I
it.
just don't want us to gloss over, why we have the outcry that we do. I just don't want us to gloss over
But I
that.
think to your point, and I get it, I think it's also important that we're not overreactionary right now, because I thought the letter did kind of say it nicely was, we get it, you're upset, we're gonna figure it out. It's gonna become clear, and when we start talking about it, but I don't know that now's the time, because we have a bigger problem to fix in this right now, in the short term. We only have a few months. Who knows what our legislators are gonna come up with. The time for that is coming, and it's probably sometime after the vote in May, if you really wanna know the truth, that we can dig it. And then how do we do that, right? Because I've thought long and hard about this, and I was a very active community member back when these bonds were going on, maybe a little bit towards the end. And it was a very tumultuous time in our community. There's no two ways about it. And as much as I may like to, I have a really hard time sitting where I sit right now, pointing fingers at people who had conversations that I wasn't in the room for, right? If we get to a point where, and I know a former trustee reached out today and wants to offer to meet with us and things like that, but you read through the letter, I'm not sure they really completely understand what the issue is. And I think we can get there at some point, but I don't, like I said, I have a real hard time, because we sit here as board members and we are confined to what the administration presents to us. That's it's just a flaw in how the system works, and it's been that way forever, and board members all across the state have to deal with it. So for all I know, the business officials, the financial advisors didn't tell the board anything. They just told them, do it this way and you're gonna get more money, you're gonna get your money front-loaded. I think the piece that people don't understand, and maybe, I don't remember if it was in the letter, and that people do have to understand, anybody that's listening to the messages, we didn't get less money, we just got our money sooner. And we put it into education because we had no idea this pitfall was coming. It's a hard thing to explain if you don't sit here and get engrossed in school finance. And let's face it, it's not the most exciting thing in the world, so people tune it out. I just think we're in a really bad spot, and I'd really like to know who it really was too. I have my ideas, but,
But finding that out right now is not helping us get this budget process
Correct.
moving.
That's the gist of what I'm
But
trying to say.
finding out how it happened is important so that we know going forward, we have structures in place so that something like this doesn't happen again. And that's why, go back to the letter about, we want to be sure, get information so that we know transfer of information from one administration to the other, transfer from the bond counsel from one to the other and to the board and our financial advisor and all of that. We're gonna find those things out, but those things right now are not helping us move this budget forward. And, I just wanted to make one comment about, the sheet here that you did, which is page 36. If I'm doing the arithmetic right, and this is not to minimize anything about even $1 of tax increases. I can certainly say for myself, and I'm picking up from my fellow board members, we realize the impact of any increase. But I wanted to look at, for me, so that I can go through the process a little better. If I'm an average homeowner, I reasonably would have expected that my taxes would be about $135 more in the coming year than they are this year. Under the worst case scenario, that would be the 409. Unless we wanted to go above the tax cap, and I take us back to the last meeting, and there wasn't anybody at this table that wanted to do that. So that's like the outside number that we're looking at. Well, the difference between 409 and 135, is that like $270? So there's like $270 in there that, as an average homeowner, I would not have expected. And that's, you know, for a lot of people in our community, that's really, really difficult. We get it, but we need to take those numbers in context and look at the long-range effect of what needs to be done. There's going to have to be a balancing act at some point between what we need to make sure that the district stays in good financial shape without liquidating our reserves to make us in a very fragile, untenable position. So even as I'm speaking now, it's really premature. We don't have all the information yet. You know, we're going to finish going through this presentation, and then you're going to introduce the ones that follow. And then just to recap, these other issues about what happened, how it happened, and what is going to be done so it doesn't ever happen again, that's going to be worked on. So if we can like try to keep our focus right now on getting this budget process moving forward, and I think everybody in the room and everybody who's working on it realizes the importance of looking very carefully at any expenditures that are recommended and how they're calculated, and again, maximizing whatever revenue is available. So thank you for letting me get that out, because I don't know if y'all could see, we were virtual last time, and you know, it's hard to read facial instructions, but I took in so much of stunning information from 2 weeks ago that I needed time to process it and to start to make some sense out of it. And now that we've got this additional presentation with the additional slides that you've given us, I think, you know, the more information that we have, and there are a couple of other interesting slides that you put in here that maybe you could go forward with. So thanks for letting me let you know how seriously this has, and again, I think I can speak for all of us, how seriously it's affected everybody around this table. We didn't ask for this situation, but it's on our table, and we've got to deal with it. And the first step of it is to get the best budget in place that we can, and then start to look at the structures and the changes going forward.
May I add something?
This is a board meeting, it's not,
Okay.
we would be happy, you have my phone number, it's on the district website. If you are sitting here, I'll give you my number when we go outside.
I'll email you.
She could speak at the conclusion, at the
You-
public portion.
If it's not a, yes, why don't you you can speak, it's a good idea. We have non-agenda items, but we waived it to read, so we will waive that and have you, if
No,
you
it's
wish
any
to
item.
speak.
She could speak on any item.
You can speak on
Why
whatever
don't we
you
have
like.
Ms. Costa complete the presentation?
Let her finish, and then we'll have you speak.
Okay, thank you. This is way past my bedtime.
Yeah,
Mine too.
yeah. I guess you can speak for all of us in that regard. So now, I think we're up to.
No, she's
No,
not
Ms.
done.
Ms.
Ms. Costa's
I
not done. She has
know,
one slide.
she's up to, I'm just looking at what page we're on.
That you teed up perfectly, which is, as Dr. Gianni mentioned, we've developed a long-range financial plan, which actually allows us to drive some of the conversations as we move forward into the future. So we were asked to provide an outlook as to what our long-range financial plan would be.
When
under
was
various
this slide added?
Excuse me?
When was this slide added? It's not on what I printed out over the weekend. When was it added?
It may have been early in the week.
Early, it's like Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay, Monday, I think.
Did we get an update that it had been changed?
I don't recall.
I know we got
I
a
don't
couple
think-
yesterday, I just don't know if it was this
Yeah,
one.
Those were the minutes. The
Yeah, I
ones
don't know, I
We got
didn't-
were the minutes. We didn't get this one. And there's a lot of information on this slide that I'm only looking at right
But the
this
purpose
minute.
of having it now is for her to just say, this is what's being looked at.
You'll
There's an opportunity
You'll see this
to
in future
go through it.
presentations as well.
So let me just explain what it is. We developed a granular document that actually identifies our categories of revenues, our categories of expenditures, and then it also shows what a surplus or deficit would be each year and how that affects your fund equity, which is the purple line at the bottom. So what this is 3 different scenarios. I'm going to talk about them in detail. This is an estimate of our revenues into the future if the district proposed a 7.76% levy, not just this year, but all years into the future, 10 years into the future. What you see here is you see our total revenue numbers growing, or you see the percent change. Here is where you see our expenditures growing from year to year, and what's important with the expenditures to note, this is our current program only, and just the growth in our current program only, and that's how you see it changing. What you see here is how that we would end the year anticipated surplus or deficit, and how that affects our fund equity at the end of the year. So what does this show us really? Basically what this slide shows us that over 10 years, if the district went out for 7.76% levy, because our tax cap calculation could call for that up to that limit every year. If you see on the far right-hand corner, we would have $146 million anticipated in fund equity. We wouldn't even know what to do with all that money. So what this does show us is that the 7.76 levy out into the future is not somewhere the district needs to be. And here is the same information. This is in green. This is if the district went out 5% levy increases for the next 10 years and the impact of that. The only thing changing on this scenario is the total revenues and how it impacts fund equity at the end. If you notice, over 10 years, the far right-hand corner, we would be able to survive 10 years of our budget development process with the assumptions that we have here. And we would deplete our fund equity, but we'd still have fund equity at the end of 10 years at a 5% levy. But it's important to note for the board and the community listening, this doesn't include any changes to our expenditures right now. It includes the same program growing, which we know that we're going to be looking at programs and looking at that. But this is just for the sake of information so the board, community can see how levies impact us going forward. And here we have a last estimate, which is if the district went forward with a 4% levy into the future. And what you see here is, same information, the only thing changed is the 4% levy. You start seeing here in the year, I think the year is 26, 27?
2028, it goes
Okay.
into the red.
27, 28, the district will enter an operational deficit. That's if we went forward with the 4% levy, no changes to our program at this point in time. So it's just so the board can see in long-range planning-wise, the decisions we make for our levy, the decisions we make for our expenditures, which are not reflected here, which will be as we move through the process, will affect our long-term outlook for the district and how we will be using our fund balance and how we will deplete it.
I have to clarify for me,
Sure.
because you used the word deficit, but when I looked at that, that figure of $4 million, on the negative side, it's in the red. That is with depleting all of our reserves. There are no reserves left. We're in the hole $4 million.
That is no fund
Well,
balance.
that's where we were in 2005, with almost $5 million in the hole.
That is
So
correct.
I don't think anybody is going to want to get back into that position. So I'm going to look forward to seeing this budget process help us come to a closer understanding of what's the sweet spot, given that on one level, there is no sweet spot anytime there's more money that has to come out of anybody's pocket. But I have one other question, because if I'm understanding correctly what's happened over the last 15 years, and I think, and you reported about how when the bonds went into effect in the 2005 to 2009 range, that you could rely on state aid to cover like roughly 3/4 of it, and the other quarter would be from the taxpayer. But none of that taxpayer obligation was ever picked up and passed on to the taxpayers. Did I understand that correctly from you?
That's what I said at the beginning, yes, that to date, none of the community contribution has been had from the community.
So does that mean that if I'm an average homeowner in South Country for the last 15 years, I've paid less taxes than I really needed to?
Conceptually, yes.
But that is at fault of the district, not the taxpayer,
And no one's gonna buy it.
correct? That's not,
This is not putting blame on.
I
It's just,
get it.
it's analyzing. I'm just trying to analyze, where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the perfect storm, Mr. Trent. It's like this could not have happened at a worse time, with everybody struggling, through COVID and the changes in work environments and all kinds of just everything. But I would like to be able to focus on getting the budget done, getting into place structures that mean that communication between all the different third parties that were involved here, that is improved to the point that a board 15 years from now is not going to look back at us and say, what were they thinking? So that, I look forward to hearing the suggestions from administration and the business department about how to get all that into place. And back to what Mr. Puccini said, some of that may not come before the actual budget vote, but we can at least make sure that the budget that gets presented is solid and based on facts. And so thank you for outlining that, because it helps me to look at something visually and not just listen to it. I think Mr. Trent's hand was up.
yes. Ms. Costa, so at what point would you be looking for a determination about what levy the board is comfortable with? Is that tonight?
We've got to
next
get
meeting?
through the whole process. So next meeting, we'll be talking about curriculum instruction, which is really the meat of the budget proposal. I think the next one, we start looking at staffing, which is really reflective of what you're going to see line by line, and probably that meeting or the meeting after. And hopefully we'll know some more information from the state with regard to aid. And once we get through that process, the board should start examining where they want to be with a levy, what they might want to use with reserves, and by that time, we would have already shared with you administration's recommendations for expenditure reductions. So it's those three things that we're going to need to look at before making those decisions.
Ms. Costa, are you able to run the long-range outlook with, like a 3% levy? You able to do that?
I can do any iteration of levy, expenditure changes. I can do any one of those at any multiple.
So you're seeing a snapshot
Yeah.
of that document that I spoke about earlier. Our thought is later in the process, when we get to that point you're talking about, that we could actually display that up on the screen and let the board talk about those scenarios in public and be able to see where they may want to land.
Okay, gotcha.
They just-
I think what this shows is that you've now got a computer program so that you can indicate all of that. And, you know, we would just have to let you know in advance so you can do it to prepare it so it could be shown.
No, we're gonna do it live.
I can
You
do
can
it
plug
live.
them
We're
in.
gonna do it live.
I can do it live.
So you can stand there, we could tell you, okay, plug in this number, and you could do it.
Which is,
You're seeing summary lines that like total revenues, total expenditures. If I expanded that, it has the categories right there, and you say to me, show me a 3% levy, show me a reduction of expenditures of 500,000. I could do that right there, and you can see the impact literally, not just next year, but for the 10 years out, right in front of you.
All right, thank you. I'm not sure who was first.
sure, okay.
Thank you. I didn't really listen to much of what you were saying, because I didn't when I get my, the board doc update, I open it up Friday night, I print out everything I want to print out, and I do my research. And prepare my questions that I send over to administration. And that's what I do for most of Friday and most of Saturday. When an update comes through, I look to see what it was. I did not see this update. If it came through, I apologize, I missed it. But it's too much in a short amount of time to be able to fully comprehend. I appreciate the effort that went into making this projection, but after a 37-page slide presentation already, to add this kind of information on slide number 38, I think was a disservice to the board. Maybe start with that the next meeting, but that's just my opinion. What the real problem is here is the revenue side. And we've been talking about it for months now, about tax breaks that are being given to huge industry to come into Brookhaven Town and be offered a tax write-off in the exchange for, you know, bringing jobs to the district. And we're not getting our fair share. The president mentioned that the taxpayer wasn't paying the full rate. Well, we're not getting our fair share because of these industrial development agencies' tax write-off. And we mentioned Bellport.com. Read the letters to the editors in Bellport.com. There's a group of people that operate out of the Brookhaven Hamlet Village Association, and they're very much on top of this IDA. And there was a hearing back in December of 2021. Did we go to it? Did the district go to it? No, the district didn't go to it, and the district didn't say anything about the tax breaks that are coming into the Yaphank area that happens to be within the South Country School District. Actually, it's split between South Country and Longwood. And projected to pay, the IDA granted a 15-year property tax exemption to the tune of over $20 million that we're going to miss in revenues for this district, $20 million. And then South Country, actually that project is all in this district. The Caithness project is split between us and Longwood. But so in this particular case, the LIPA, that was granted back in 2007. They generated megawatts worth of energy, paid only $9.7 million in property tax. And yet the same industry generated a third of the energy for Port Jeff, and they got $32 million in their property tax increase. And we're not doing anything about it. If you listen to the hearing that took place on December 8th, 2021, you would have heard many of our community members speaking out against these tax breaks because of what it's doing to the district. Because the best economic engine we have in our community is our children and their education. And we're not doing enough to make sure we get our fair share. And that's what we have to start doing with this budget process. a redistribution of the tax burden on the residents and the business is diminishing our property values as well, and why the slide before is so skewed with what we're paying versus what districts like Bayport is paying. So I can't stress enough how much further we have to get involved civically with the government agencies that control our destiny when it comes to these tax breaks. And that's the case in point. We were getting $10 million in taxes, and the North Shore District got $32 million for less of a break. And those are the issues, and where you can read, you just read them in the letters to the editor. If we don't have a subscription to Bellport.com, the district should get one, and those letters should be copied and sent out in the weekly update to all of our Board of Education members. Because that's where it is. Our community is already speaking out, and we're not responding in kind. And we have to do more to get our fair share of taxes when it comes to these tax breaks that are being awarded. And two people on the committee live right in our district, live right in our backyard, and yet they too are awarding these huge tax breaks. Our streets, as it was shared to me by a constituent, should be lined with gold, because one company in particular is bringing one job into the community for a $9.5 million tax break. And we have to do something about it, and I can't stress that enough. Thank you.
Is there a way that at a future meeting, we could get briefed a little bit about how the pilots work? Because, you've heard me say, and the legislative committee is well aware, this is one of the legislative activities through the New York State School Boards Association, because it would, my understanding is it would require a change in legislation in Albany to start to address it. So I think it would be helpful to have a better understanding of exactly how it does impact us. And, in terms of exemptions that take property or parts of the value of property off the tax rolls, how that affects the budget planning that we need to do. So I wonder if there is something
We can
we can
certainly
get
do
that.
that. I think that'd be a little later down the road, though, because we have a couple of very tough budget meetings to go
Right.
through. Possibly couple it with the budget hearing meeting, but we had initially
If
planned
there's
to
time.
look at the 5-year plan.
And I realize that this is not going to be helping us get this budget in place, but that's another thing to put down as something that we're going to be addressing in the future.
Yeah, we already do have that down. The board had suggested that once before.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so, Mr. Pacino.
So, in regards, I wasn't gonna talk about pilots, but, Cheryl brings up a couple of points, and, I have my issues with pilots, as well, but probably a little bit different than Ms. Felice. What I really would like to know, and I don't know if we have this, I would like to know, based on the list of our pilots, how many of them have been extended when stayed finalized? Like, I know Quality King went to 10 years, it was extended for 5 years because they did a renovation of some type. I don't know if we have that information, so because the answer from the town is gonna be very simple. Okay, nobody's gonna come if we don't give them the tax breaks. That's gonna be the argument, right? So how do you overcome it? The money we're getting on pilots, is a plus unless you think somebody's gonna go there and go on the full tax roll, and a business isn't gonna do that. Most likely, they're gonna, especially if it's big, they're gonna look for a break. My problem is when they expire, there's always some sort of rule that comes out that lets them extend it. I think Quality King put a fence in an area for their pallets, they got an extra 5 years. That's pretty egregious to me. But, if they're trying to lure a business in, there's all sorts of little IDA pockets all over Long Island looking for people to come for industries. Everybody wants jobs. So they're competing against other municipalities for these businesses to come. Whether it's successful or not, people can debate it all. I can't say it is or it isn't. So for me, it's about the extension, not the pilots. And I think sometimes the community's a little confused about what the benefit would be, because some of those places, if they were vacant, they wouldn't bring us anything, right? Caithness, could be just a big old field with nothing on it. I don't know if anybody, I don't know what it's zoned for, you know, I don't really know. My bigger concern when we talk about, losing tax revenue is the governor's proposal to eliminate single-family housing. That's a major threat, because we could double our enrollment overnight without any additional tax revenue. So there's different things in there that are in there, but my original point that I wanted to make up was on this sheet and how beneficial this was. And it wasn't planned, but it ended up coming out in the meeting with the legislators, so that, and Senator Whitehead actually requested it when it was referenced. And it really gave them an excellent snapshot into the threats, because if you look at the bottom line here, by 2028, you know, we have a problem. And going to what I said before, I certainly don't want to pass that. I don't know, God willing, I'm not gonna be here. I'll be alive, but maybe not on the board in 6 years from now. But maybe I will, who knows? But the point is, if we don't address this right now, there's gonna be a board sitting here just like us in 6 years wondering how on earth we're gonna fix this. And I think that's really important, and I think both of our legislators understood that and recognized that. And it was Senator White who said it a few different times. You have a debt problem and a revenue problem. And if this doesn't get fixed, you're just gonna kick the can down the road. And I don't think anybody here wants to do that. And that's important for the public to understand, is we have to fix a couple of different problems here going forward, or else a group of people are gonna be sitting here and they may say, well, those jerks in, 2022 kick this right down to us. And I don't feel comfortable doing that, so.
I think there's a meeting of the minds on that one. So, this has got to be the longest meeting that we have had, and we do have more things we need to cover. We've got the next item on the agenda.
Or we can do it on this one.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is an item to talk about the mask mandate. And I'm requesting the board to give me the authority that they had given me back in June to allow me to move the mask to optional. So if the New York State governor chooses to do that as well. We put a resolution there that is similar to the resolution you approved in June last year, and that is.
But I believe you.
Hereby authorize the superintendent to modify the reopening plan to reflect new guidance regarding masks to be issued by the state or local authorities.
And that's with, in particular, because of the break that's coming up, should anything come down over the.
So my concern is something's going to happen over the break, and then we're gonna be scrambling, or I'm gonna be scrambling to make a decision before Monday hits. So that's the reason I'm.
So the board is giving you the authority, should that happen,
And
you have the authority to.
my intention would be, if the state does say that the masks are optional, that I would move the district to optional as well.
So would this resolution reflect the authority to modify the reopening plan to reflect a mask optional, to reflect that mask will be optional in the event that the mask mandate is removed by the state?
Yes.
Okay, because it says,
Yeah, the
to reflect-
language right
it says to reflect new guidance.
Maybe.
Okay, so.
Yeah, it should be specific to the state.
Do you wanna
Say to reflect
Draft.
elimination of the state mask.
restate it?
Yes. So it would be the Board of Education hereby authorizes the superintendent to modify the reopening plan to reflect that masks will be optional in the event the state lifts the mask mandate.
Did you get that, Christine?
Yes.
When you're done, if you can
Can I-
repeat the whole thing for us.
And I do have a question about that. And the question has to do with the Suffolk County Department of Health and how any guidance from them would figure into this.
Do you want
That-
Well, right now, the Suffolk County Department of Health has guidance stated. If the Suffolk County Department of Health should institute a mask mandate, if the state should lift the mask mandate, and if local Department of Health issues a mandate, your reopening plan by default would have to provide for the mask mandate as per the local Department of Health.
So should the language be that the reopening plan can be modified in the event that there are no mask mandates in effect?
Yeah, that's fine, either way.
Would that make it more clear for
I
you?
just don't,
Would you like to have that reflect both state and county?
I would say not, yeah, any mask, but I'd say either state or county.
Okay. You want to read back what?
What John originally said was the Board of Education hereby authorizes the superintendent to modify the reopening plan to reflect that masks will be optional in the event the state lifts the mask mandate. Am I adding something to that?
And do you
In the
think
event
that
that,
we?
in the event there is no longer a mask mandate in effect,
But you have to
On
also say
either
for
the state
or
or
the county.
federal,
well,
or
it's any,
state,
it's any.
any?
Any. But there isn't a mask mandate now for the county, is what you're saying.
There is no mask mandate. Right now, the Department of Health has a guidance on there.
Okay,
So then that does it.
right.
I'm sorry.
Any mandate.
So, plan to reflect the masks will be optional in the event the state lifts any mask mandate?
In the event there is no mask mandate.
In effect, right? In event
In
there is
event-
no mask mandate in effect.
There's no mask mandate in effect?
Yes, period.
So can I just read that so I have it right?
Yeah.
The Board of Education hereby authorizes the superintendent to modify the reopening plan to reflect that masks will be optional in the event there is no mask mandate in effect. Is that right? Thank you.
Okay, I think
Is
that's,
there,
I think
is,
that's,
is there a motion to approve the recommendation that, I say Ms. Aruda and second by Mr. Puccini? Any questions or discussion by board members? And just to clarify, when making your decision, to modify the reopening plan along these lines, you will take into consideration the people in the community who have different views about the wearing of masks, and, you know, and you'll take that into account in order to make the best determination for our kids and our staff.
Sure, and I'll probably, when I write, is encourage folks to continue to wear the mask.
I have a comment. And I know that Dr. Johnny said that he, would follow, the state's lead, but I feel like this decision should be made by the board and the board alone. I don't feel like we should punt this decision to anyone, whether we go optional or not. That's just my personal belief. And we also didn't give the community any warning that we would be doing this tonight, which is another issue I have, so I'm gonna be
I hear
voting.
what you're saying, but I don't see it that way. It's not punting. What it is doing is saying, if there is no mask mandate in effect, then we want the reopening plan modified so that it's mask optional.
Well, what we're saying is, if there's no state mandate, we want Dr. Gianni to have the ability to make whatever choice he sees fit. He has indicated to us tonight he will follow the state's lead, but there is no mandate that he has to do that, as per what I'm reading in this.
That's
vote.
not how I read it. Can we just get council to
Well, I think
weigh
we're
in?
giving him our direction right now. If you vote yes, you're saying, I want masks to be optional. If you vote no, you're saying, I still want kids to wear masks.
Which
You
is
have
how
the
motion
conversation now.
reads. The motion is up there, and
Yeah.
that is how it reads.
That's what we're saying in essence, right?
That we're hereby authorizing the superintendent.
And I would agree with Mr. Trent,
Okay, I got
had we not been coming up with the break. And that's really what I think is, what precipitated this concern, that over the break, if something happens, we're not going to be meeting, that we're discussing it now, giving the superintendent the authority to move forward to make mask optional. I believe that's why I'm comfortable with moving forward and giving him that authority, because we have that break coming up. Otherwise, we would be able to meet, we would be able to make the decision, but you're right, we're just going to Mr. Pacini's point.
We're doing it in anticipation, because otherwise, the first day back from the break, there's going to be confusion on the part of our families if the governor has lifted the mask mandate in the meantime.
Yeah.
If
So,
the governor lifts the mask mandate and we don't, you're gonna have half your student population showing up without masks. It'll be pandemonium, in my opinion.
so this is, are we ready to vote? Any more comments?
We have a motion and a second, right?
I think we
Yeah.
did motion and second.
if I could vote.
All in favor? We've got 5 in favor, any opposed? 1 opposed. So the approval is given.
Thank you. Moving on to curriculum items. Administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 and through G3.
Is there a motion to approve items G1 through G3? Ms. Felice, second, Mr. Pacini. Questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay. It's unanimously approved.
Moving on to personnel, administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in schedules H1 through H8.
Is there a motion to approve personnel items H1 through H8?
Motion.
It's
It's fine, it's just you were looking down.
Oh, no, he has the motion, I
Yeah,
have
it's
the
fine,
second.
you were looking down.
I just want
so
to
I
move
wanna
it,
call
move it
out.
along.
Okay, Mr. Pacini made the motion, Ms. Felice made the second.
Yeah.
Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? This one is unanimously approved.
And moving on to business, administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I1 through I4.
Is there a motion to approve I1 through I4? Ms. Aruda, second by Mr. Pacini. Questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? This is unanimously approved.
And
Okay, we're
that's
back
all
to
I have.
public commentary, so Ms. Johnson, you're up.
Oh, thanks. I'm not usually allowed to stay up this late, but anyway, I just want to thank you for listening to me before. And I appreciate what Ms. Felice said regarding getting whatever letter had been sent out already, getting it to the rest of the population and finding out how much that would cost. I'd be glad to float along to the district to have it sent out. If you need the money to send it out, if the money is truly an issue. But I think that would allay any concerns, the letter that already has been sent out, that taxpayers in the district have, residents throughout the district. I strongly believe that. But thank you for listening to me, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay,
I just have a quick question.
yeah.
Jen, when teachers apply for Donors Choose, do they tell the district beforehand or do they tell us after? And how do we find out
They
about that?
generally make the application.
Say it again?
They generally make the application themselves, the principals are aware of it.
Okay. If we can we just get a list of them? Because I look for teachers and sometimes it's hard to find them. Which ones, they're in a district if we wanted to support or know somebody wants to support Donors Choose. If we could just if we can get a list if that's possible.
You could go on and you can search by school.
Oh, you can search by
You can
school?
search by school, you can search by town or by school.
on donors choose itself.
Anyone?
Anyone can go on, because that, you would have people looking at other projects and then funding other projects.
So you can just go on and do it.
Let's see, closing remarks, Ms. Johnson?
No, not.
Does anybody have a closing remark here?
Thank you.
I think we're all remarked out tonight,
Yes, absolutely.
so,
Just to reiterate, I would like to see the letter go out, all rate to the entire district, to each household.
okay, so, Mr. Trent, you're up. You
You
have the
got it.
motion to adjourn, second by Ms. Aruda. All in favor, this one